Hello once again, lovers of luscious layers. This is me, Brandon Hart, the ECOstruder, and we're doing something pretty fun today. We've got in front of us the Project R3D Talos 1800, still fully in the box, haven't touched anything, haven't opened anything, but I wanted to show everybody what it is like to get a Talos 1800, or any of the Taloses. They all basically go together the same way, up and running from unboxing to operation. So that's what we're doing today. They're claiming this whole thing's going to take only a couple of hours to be up and running. That'll be something to see. Let's find out. All right, I am ready to uncrate this thing and start getting into it. But a couple things I have to note up front, just for being fair and everything like that. So we've done some videos like this before in the past. It's been a while. Those were with Modix machines, and as we saw in those videos, it takes quite a long time to unpack everything, get it all assembled and so on. So pretty interested to see how differently this one goes together. But just like when we were doing the Modix videos, while we're doing this one, I have to preface everything with a little bit of a disclaimer. We are no longer working with Modix, but we are working with Project R3D. So this is the first machine. This will actually go into our production print farm at HeartSmart Products. And this is a machine that we are currently selling. So there you go. Take everything with a grain of salt or whatever, but I like to think that I'm pretty unbiased in these videos, and I will be kind of unfiltered in terms of my thoughts and how everything goes together. So just want to get that out of the way. We are actually selling Talos machines, but this will actually determine kind of how closely and how much we recommend these things. So should be pretty interesting for all involved. Okay, that out of the way. Let's jump into this thing and figure out what's going on. One thing that is important to understand is, you may notice we've got a crate. We've also got 3 different boxes here. They are just kind of getting these machines out the door at this point. So they're working on how they're going to be crating these things up. The intention is that there will not be extra boxes for anybody who's buying these things going forward, but since we got one of the very first machines and they're still figuring it out, not everything fit in the crate that they made here. So we ended up having to get some boxes from UPS separately. So we'll unbox everything together, but just know that anybody who's actually going to be doing this going forward, everything will be coming out of one single crate, and this is all that will arrive. So that being said, let's jump in. Okay, I think we've got the lid unscrewed here, so let's see what it's like. So it looks like the crate may have had a few bumps along the way. I'm going to see if I can show this to you. So we lost this center support during transit, but it doesn't look like that would have hit anything anyway. So far so good. So one of the reasons why they're able to say that this machine will take so little time to put together is the fact that everything comes in sub-assemblies. And so essentially you're just putting together the sub-assemblies into a final machine. So you can see that already in the way that it is packed into this crate. All right, let's get on with it. Okay, we got the crate off, so now take off the individual pieces. Whoa. might be a good idea to have some help when you're taking this off of here. But looks like what was wrapped up in this cardboard here is the enclosure panels. Okay, looks like we got a lot of zip ties here holding everything together. So I didn't look too deeply into the assembly instructions. I could have, but I kind of wanted this to be a process of figuring it all out on camera. And but one of the things I was looking for that I did not find was any sort of uncrating or unboxing instructions. It pretty much just gets into putting the pieces together once they are out of the crate and the boxes. So I'm doing what seems like the right thing, but there's no specific instructions telling me that this is the way that I'm supposed to do it. And it looks like we might have our first casualty here from the shipping process. Let me show you. So right here, kind of cool that the casters come attached already, but this one is clearly bent. So the plate that holds that caster on got it looks like maybe the corner got hit and bent that plate. Other than that, everything seems to be in pretty good condition so far. Here is where it would be good to have help. So I'm going to call in some help to lift these pieces off. Now this may not be such a big deal if you have one of the smaller models. They also make a Talos 1200 and a Talos 600, but this 1800 is quite long, and so on this one we're just going to lift the frame up and off, being very careful about all the pieces that are hanging off of it. Everybody shout out Alan in the comments. Hi, Alan. And that is a pretty impressive looking electronics box. Look at all those connectors sticking out of there. That's cool. That is very cool. Oh, thank goodness. The PEI sheets are already applied. That is one of the things I hated the most about putting together Modix machines, is putting those PEI sheets on there. Whew, that's nice. All right, so I'm going to call this unboxed because there's basically just a piece of frame sitting here and then the bed sitting on that. So, hello darkness, my old friend. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. And we're back. I heard all of you screaming. I know we had not unboxed all of the boxes yet. We still had these 3 UPS boxes. So let's go ahead and get those opened up real quick, and then we can actually start putting some stuff together. So let's go smallest to biggest. Who's in the box? Printed parts and some fasteners. Wow, lots of printed parts. Some PTFE tubing, more brackets and fasteners, Ember prototypes. This would be the camera assisted XY calibration tool. So those are pretty cool. If you haven't seen those before, those are pretty neat. More parts. The screen. So you can see how this was packed. Not that it really matters too much, because the expectation is that there won't be these additional boxes when you are getting other Talos machines. Okay. So this is the actual gantry for the tool heads, for the print heads. And remember, this is a full IDEX machine. So we've got 2 independent print heads, and everything is already fully assembled. Again, these are all sub-assemblies. And so here are our 2, in this case, I opted for the LGX Ace Mosquito Magnum Plus print heads and 0.6 millimeter Diamondback nozzles. So that's what we've got on this particular setup. Pretty nice setup. Cool. Got some panels. Looks like these are maybe the doors. I'm guessing these are the doors. Let's see what's in here. I think it's just the acrylic. Yep, acrylic panels. So there we go. Perfect. Okay, now we are officially unboxed. So let's jump into assembly. And we're back. So you may notice a slight wardrobe change, and I don't know, it may look a little different here too. This is actually a different day. Things were a little too hectic around here yesterday, and so I had to kind of pause the assembly before we got too deep into it. And today I am planning to finish it all up. So since we're taking a pause here before we're getting started anyway, I just want to mention a few things that I find particularly interesting about what I'm seeing so far. So first of all, sub-assemblies. I was expecting sub-assemblies. I knew that the assembly of this machine was basically going to be putting together a bunch of sub-assemblies. That was why everything was going to go together so quickly. But seeing just the full extent of how much the machine is basically pre-assembled for us is pretty impressive. It's really nice. So essentially, this half and this half are just going to fold up. We're going to put some cross members between them, and then that's basically the frame. So that's going to go together super fast. All the components, the motion system and everything is essentially pre-installed in those components as well. So I can see how this is going to go quite quickly once we actually get underway. But there's some really cool things that I really like. Like, check out this electronics box. I know I sort of showed it earlier, but look at all these connectors that are on the back here. That's pretty cool. And then the box itself just kind of mounts right there, and you've got all your switches and everything. I don't know, that's nice. Very modular, very cool. So I like that about it. And the motion system for the Z-axis, let me put this down. So the motion system for the Z-axis, you usually assume a big machine like this is probably going to be using ball screws. That's certainly what we're used to. But in this case, we're not using ball screws. Hopefully you can see this. But these are actually lead screws. And but these are very large lead screws driven by very large NEMA 23 motors. And I think this could be really good. It's just a little different than what people might expect when you get a large machine. So I can see how there would be some advantages to this. It's going to be very difficult to back drive the bed, so the bed likely will not fall when the motors are powered off. We've seen that problem before on some machines that use ball screws, so that could be cool. The rails on these motion system parts are locked in place with some 3D printed brackets, so that way everything can be mounted without it sliding around during shipping. So I do like that as well. There are also quite a few 3D printed parts in this machine here, so that's certainly a way to keep the costs of any custom brackets or parts down. So that is maybe where some of the cost savings comes in. But with that said, enough speculation. Let's just actually get into putting this thing together and getting it fired up for the first time. Sweet. I'm going to refer to the Talos assembly guide, which is public on Project R3D.com on the website there. There's no login credentials required. It's not behind any kind of username wall or anything like that. So you can actually just go out to projectr3d.com, go to the documentation section, and take a look at the Talos kit assembly step. It is one single page. There's not a lot to it. Again, sub-assemblies. That's the beauty of sub-assemblies. So it should be pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so one thing to note for any of you watching this in order to prepare yourselves for assembly, there are these 4 screws on the ends of each one of these end pieces. Those slide down into the extrusions for the front and back pieces. And these screw heads need to stick out about 5 millimeters so they can slide down into the channels. So that is an interesting way to put these things together. I think it'll probably be very effective and probably a good one, but you may notice too that this is definitely not a one-person job. So make sure that you have help. So kudos to Project Red for including some decent tools. There's actually a socket wrench in there and some adapters and stuff like that. Legit brand name Klein Tools hex drivers. So I was just using the included Klein Tools hex driver to tighten up each one of the screws that holds the basic frame together, but then I backed it back off again so that there's still room and some wiggle room to use the alignment jigs to tighten everything down and square it up. Pretty sure you're not actually supposed to tighten the screws down in this step because there's a future step that actually requires you to use jigs and get everything tightened up that way. But I had some of the screws too long, and so they were actually pushing the frame away and preventing it from ever being square. So this is not part of the assembly steps in the guide, but I tightened them all down and then backed it off one turn so that they're still loose, but at least they're all the right length in the frame. You could, I suppose, eliminate the need for this step if you had everything exactly 5 millimeters backed off like it says in the instructions, but I don't know. I didn't measure them, so this is my way of doing that. All right, so I want to show you something because I think this is pretty neat. So the assemblies, the sub-assemblies, in order for these to ship the way that they, basically come pre-assembled, everything has to be mounted, but in order to securely mount the motors and the idlers to the frame, they need to overlap the side pieces, which are not part of the sub-assembly. So to do that, you loosen these brackets up and then you slide everything over and attach it to the side pieces. So everything is already put together, it's already in place. You just have to loosen these brackets and then slide everything over. Obviously, there's a little too much belt here, so we'll need to cut that and give us a little bit more room. But then we'll be able to slide these motor and idler assemblies or brackets over onto the side pieces and secure them in place there. So kind of a neat idea in the way that they set all of this up. Okay, lost you there for a bit. The camera decided to stop recording for a little while, but basically the state that we are at is we have all of the motor brackets installed, pulled off to the side, so they are now connected to the side brackets as well as the front and back frame pieces. So you can see right under here, everything is all screwed in on both sides. Everything is loose right now though, and so we're about to tighten it all up and make sure everything is square. So I wanted to show you exactly how that process works on one of these things. But before I do, I thought I would point out something that I don't think the camera caught when I was trying to point it out before. So you see how there are some T-nuts pre-installed on this side over here as well in this nice staggered pattern. It's great that those are pre-installed. Unfortunately, if we go over to the other side, take a trip with me. Here we go. We're here. So this is the idler bracket. You might notice that screw pattern is very similar. Yeah. So apparently when Project Red builds these kits, they actually pre-assemble them in their location and leave all of the T-nuts and things where they need to be, so that putting these together on the other end, by the customer is nice and easy. However, it would seem that this side was over there and that side was over here when they assembled it. Now, nowhere in the instructions does it say anything about one side needing to be on one side of the machine or anything like that. So my assumption is that these are absolute copies of each other, and so therefore they are interchangeable, and therefore this doesn't matter, except that it's a bit of an inconvenience and takes a little extra time to put some more T-nuts in there. And we've got extra T-nuts that are not being used. I don't know if you can see that, but there are extra T-nuts not being used because this bracket only has 2 screws instead of 4. So that's interesting. Okay, now on to the next interesting part. Back over here. This is how you square up the frame when you're tightening it up. These thick metal brackets here, and I know brackets is a bit of an overstatement, plate, screws into the vertical posts, the vertical 40/40 extrusions here, and just overhangs this horizontal piece. Apparently, per the instructions, you then take a clamp and you clamp onto that bracket to square everything up against that thick plate. So you do that on the top and the bottom, which should bring everything into square, and then you tighten it down. Okay, got the frame tightened down and used those plate jigs. Also put screws in the caster plates and got those tightened. That was kind of a pain because they're up underneath the bottom. There's not a lot of clearance there, but there was just enough. And I'm very pleased that the T-nuts were already pre-installed for those, because trying to put those T-nuts in that 40/40 slot there underneath everything and slide them into the brackets into the right place would have been pretty painful. But I've never seen that type of squaring jig before, and I'm pretty curious whether that actually did result in a fully square frame. So we're going to measure from corner to corner diagonally on the frame and see if the measurements come out the same. If they do, then theoretically we should have a nice square frame. Okay, I'm impressed. That's pretty good. Wow. Nice job, Project Red. For reference, we are now on step 10. Step 10 is preparing the XU axis, which is this right here. That's where the tool heads are. All right, so at this point I have got the entire frame put together. I've got the belts all connected. I've got the print heads installed. Basically, the only thing left to do, I believe, before we've got a functional machine, is actually get the electronics box on, plug everything in, get the, basically the wiring, which is essentially just plugging stuff in, and then we should be pretty close to having a ready to test machine, or ready to start calibrating at least. So, what are we waiting for? Let's do it. All right, well, got a bit of a question, a little bit confused at the moment, because I just completed step 15 in the assembly instructions, and that was to mount the electronics box. There is no step 16. So,
2 hours later.
I'm going to use my best judgment and try to finish it myself, because, I've done this once or twice, not on a Talos machine, but once or twice with others. So I feel like I can kind of put, the pieces together and figure out where they go. But we'll see if I'm up to the task or not. Here we go. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how that video turned out, seeing as things did not go very smoothly, which may or may not be obvious from what you just watched. But my cameraman was out sick, so I was trying to do it by myself, and I was using my phone to record, and the space on my phone kept filling up. Then my phone died, the battery just completely died. The audio was being captured on a different device, and we're not totally sure whether that worked. So I'll be curious to know how what you just watched turned out. But this is going to wrap it up for part 1 of the Talos 1800 build. And depending upon how much footage we captured, you maybe saw that everything has been mechanically put together and electrically complete. So just as a demonstration here, I'm going to go ahead and just hit home all, and the bed is lowering, the gantry is moving, the individual print heads are going to their respective sides, and then we will get a Z-axis home with the inductive probe here momentarily. So it is together, everything works. The only thing that is not on the machine at the moment, obviously, is the enclosure. And there are a couple reasons for that. Number one, ran out of time, phone died, all the things I mentioned before. And number two, there are absolutely no instructions for how to put the enclosure on this machine. The instructions stopped at put the electronics box on the side of the printer. Didn't even include things like how to wire everything up or how to run cables or anything along those lines. It was purely just mount the box. There is a diagram that shows where the individual plugs go into, so I was able to use that diagram and figure out how everything's supposed to work and how things are supposed to plug in, so that's why the machine is able to operate currently. But we're going to cut it off here. This is the end of video 1 with a mechanically and electrically complete printer. We could technically start printing right now, but obviously this machine is intended to have an enclosure, so we're going to complete that in part 2. And then I will also have a little bit more experience working with the machine to give you more of my first impressions, sort of thoughts from the heart kind of review of the machine itself. But so far so good. It's gone together fairly quickly, maybe not in the 1 to 2 hours that they had previously claimed. Definitely some issues with the instructions, missing some steps and not being quite as descriptive as they could be. The images weren't loading, so we had a few problems there. There were a couple of missing parts that we've experienced up to this point. The power cords weren't included, happened to have some laying around, so it ended up not being an issue, but the power cords were not included, and we were missing the Wi-Fi antenna as well. So those are on the way from Project Red, and you know, that'll be good to have those replacements since we stole the antenna from another machine. Okay, enough yapping. I will see you in part 2. Please make sure that you subscribed to the channel and you ring the bell to be notified when part 2 is posted, so that way you don't miss it. But this is the Project Red Talos 1800. Pretty cool machine, pretty impressive with the way things are going together. Love the power of sub-assemblies. Yes, sub-assemblies are fantastic. And yeah, that's it. See you in part 2.